Seeing into the future is no easy task. Unseen risks lie waiting everywhere. So being prepared for any eventuality is a Bryte decision. As a premier proactive insurance specialist, Bryte Insurance partners with you and your business to manage your insurance needs. Visit bryteinsure.co.za or contact your broker for more. Bryte Insurance. Approach risk with purpose.
Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to Bryte's highly anticipated annual Business Partner Conference. My name is Nolene Maolwana-Sango, and I'm very pleased to be facilitating today's discussions, which we promise will be very insightful. As you are aware, the focus of Bryte's annual event is twofold. The first part is an update on key developments across the business over the past 12 to 16 months. The other, more expansive focus is firstly on understanding global and local risk trends. Secondly, analyzing risk readiness. Thirdly, supporting Bryte's partners and customers to effectively and sustainably navigate risk. Each year, these events are an opportunity for face-to-face interactions, and while this year may be markedly different, we promise it will not fall short in terms of quality. So in the spirit of creativity, agility, and embracing digital, we will be switching between this studio and a host of recorded inserts. You will also have the option to interact with specialists from Bryte in the various breakaway rooms for more focused discussions. You can also visit Bryte's UMA partners in the exhibition hall. Please do refer to the virtual program for more information. I'm particularly excited to introduce you to each of our speakers and segments and to see where the conversations lead. In terms of protocols, the explainer video should have provided a detailed enough view of how the platform works. There are just a few aspects I'd like to touch on. All videos you will be watching today have been recorded observing the relevant COVID-19 safety protocols. Throughout today's session, you will be able to use the chat function to ask as many questions as you would like. We will be pulling some of your questions and posing these to our panelists. The remaining questions will be responded to by way of a post-event update. There are exciting prizes up for grabs, which will be awarded at random to some lucky participants. You will also see polls pop up on the bottom right-hand screen at different points during today's program. Please simply click on your chosen answer to participate in these. On that note, as we kick off today's event, I want to hand over to Bryte CEO, Edwin O'Neill. Over to you, Edwin.
Oh, hi, Nolene. Good to be with you. And a special welcome to all our UMAs, their staff, our brokers, claims teams, as well as our own staff. It's really great to spend time with you, and thank you for joining us today. I hope you're all staying healthy and safe as we try and observe the protocols here as well. The past 16 months has indeed tested us in many, many ways. And one of the implications of the pandemic is, of course, the loss of life. And my condolences go out to all of those who have either lost family or friends or colleagues during this time. Yeah, we would rather see each other face to face. And there's so many good memories of us traveling the country and spending time with our broker partners. And we wish to get back to those days. But as we enter into today's event, I'd really like to say thank you to all our broker partners for the wonderful support that we've had over the past 12 months. It's exceeded my expectations. We've had wonderful growth, exceeding our budgets, and our industry has truly showed its resilience during these tough times. So for that, I'm very grateful. We've put together a good show, we've worked hard, and we encourage everyone to ask us questions, and we'd love to respond a little later. Thank you, Nolene.
Thank you very much for that, Edwin. Ladies and gentlemen, to kick off this morning's discussions, we're joined by some very familiar faces. Our panel comprises CEO Edwin O'Neill, Chief Underwriting Officer JP Blignout, Chief Claims Officer Cloud Sangwame and Executive Head of Broker Distribution Chris Grieve, Botswana CEO Ziki Nganunu. I recently sat down with these gentlemen to discuss key Bryte developments over the past year. They also shared a glimpse of what to expect over the coming months. Please join me as we switch to our first video of the day. Over to the Bryte Business Updates desk. Edwin, unprecedented is one of the most commonly used terms to describe 2020. A year upended by chaos and besieged by fear. A year that put us all through our paces like never before. Of course, there were also wonderful successes despite the chaos, like the world's second biggest democracy electing its first female vice president. Having said that, over these past 14 months, what has been the most significant learning, but more importantly, what have you also been most proud of as a business?
This pandemic has reminded us of our vulnerability as humans. It has been about courage and reminded us of the importance of our people. We have maintained our composure and focused on our agility, adaptability, and resilience, overcoming many hurdles to support our employees, our communities, and our customers. The Bryte family undertook a range of initiatives that delivered more than 60 million in relief to those in need. Appreciating that this is a marathon, it is gratifying to achieve this and be able to continue playing our part, whatever size or form.
Those are indeed feats to be very proud of, Edwin. On the topic of COVID and customers, Cloud, the claims department has had to deal with an unparalleled volume of claims and, of course, a multitude of complexities. How has your team navigated this journey?
What's commendable is how the claims processing and other support teams shifted gears almost overnight. Over the past 14 months, they have worked tirelessly to settle thousands of claims exceeding over 500 million. That too in record time frames. The teams have been uncompromising on due diligence and ensuring adherence to the policy contract. We did our best to simplify processes and provide feedback. We are also deeply grateful for the support our partners have continued to provide to our customers, as well as for the collaboration with our teams.
That sounds very impressive, Cloud. I don't think any business could have ever imagined, let alone be prepared for what has been an escalating and very unsettling reality. JP, this brings me to my next question, which is around technology and innovation to enhance the business's value proposition and access to it.
In terms of Bryte's own digital transformation strategy, COVID has certainly accelerated this substantially. Over the past 16 months, we have been actively driving our transition to our new operating system in South Africa. This is one of the greatest projects we've undertaken, and we are very excited about the opportunities this brings with it. This system comes with tremendous benefits, not only for our own teams, but also for our customers and our partners. Thanks to TIA, quicker turnaround times for claims, significantly improved quoting efficiencies, greater process consistencies, and access, more effective payment collection systems, automated communication, and documentation of the highest professional standards will become the mainstay. We are committed to actively and intelligently capture and extrapolate our data so we can leverage relevant insights to continue to bolster our market competitiveness.
Chris, I understand that there have been some interesting developments from a partnership perspective. What can you tell us about this?
Nolene, we have always made it our priority to form strategic partnerships with progressive players to diversify or complement our offering, broaden our capability in the niche market sectors, and enhance our ability to service customers and brokers. Despite the pandemic, in May last year, we partnered with Vapshaw. At the start of the year, we also announced that we had acquired a controlling stake in Sapphire Risk Transfer. We deeply value our broker partnerships and take our partnership role very, very seriously. We have an established reputation of empowering, growing, and sharing meaningful insights and are thrilled by the continued success of Bryte Academy. In 2020 alone, the number of training courses completed on this learning and development portal was record high.
As we wrap up these business updates, I'd like to shift the focus to Ziggy, the captain of the Bryte Botswana ship.
Our focus is on providing innovative, cutting-edge, but also relevant products to consumers and enterprises. I have to say that I'm particularly proud at how quickly we were able to adapt to the changes that were brought about by COVID-19. In terms of our partnership proposition, we also began the process of training and granting our tied agents access to our new system. This year, we aim to expand the access and opportunity to our broker partners as well. At the end of last year, we also launched our Sharia-compliant range of insurance solutions, extending from personal cover to commercial insurance. Developed primarily to align with the requirements of Islamic finance, Sharia-compliant insurance presents an opportunity for our broker partners to enter into a new market segment with great growth potential. Despite the challenges we were faced with the last year, I would say we did a pretty good job of weathering the storm and achieving growth across the Botswana business.
Looking ahead to the coming months, Ziggy, what can Bryte's partners and customers expect?
Good question, Nolene. We are focusing on lines of business where our broker partners have struggled to get capacity. One of those areas is aviation. So we have begun introducing our updated aviation solution in partnership with the leading experts in aviation insurance. Now, Nolene, you will know as well as anyone else how badly the pandemic has affected the hospitality industry. We are thus enhancing our support to this industry by rolling out 2 bespoke hospitality products. One of the products is tailored to the needs of large safari lodges, and the other caters to bed and breakfasts and small lodges. We are also about to launch a brand new offering for the construction industry. We will be rolling out a comprehensive offering of bonds and guarantees to enable our partners to support citizen and multinational contractors as they go out to tender for infrastructure work. So, to our partners who may be interested in bolstering or diversifying their services, stay tuned for more details.
That is quite an interesting development, especially given the current challenges facing global aviation. So, Edwin, in concluding the business update segment, what should we look forward to from Bryte over the next 12 months?
On the topic of aviation, here's some of the other ways which Bryte will be preparing for the liftoff. Number 1, we'll be expanding our profile. Our branding communication strategy is bigger and better than ever. By now, you would have probably heard a few of our radio ads or seen our TV ads, and that is only the beginning. Number 2, we aim to deepen our focus on service excellence across our business value chain, ensuring the highest level of responsiveness, ongoing employee training, and the most robust risk management solutions. Number 3, we have invested in data analytics and will continue to do so. Number 4, we aim to complete our migration to tier over the coming year, progressively bringing online more products and services. Our emphasis is on enhancing our market relevance, staying ahead of the ongoing change, and remaining connected to our stakeholders in a more meaningful way. While this continues to be a period of learning, reflection and growth, Bryte is more agile, resilient, and better prepared for the rapidly evolving market. We remain committed to building enduring partnerships to support the growth of our customers, our partners, and our brokers.
Living through a global pandemic has had an unprecedented and changing impact on our lives. one that is somewhat heightened as to so many countries grapple with third waves of the virus. We have all had to adjust and readjust to different ways of doing business, traveling and socializing. Nonetheless, as we adapt to new ways of living, we still need to be aware of the risks that continue to affect us. On this note, for a brief overview of the year that was, let's head over to our next video with Edwin O'Neill and JP Blichnout at the 2020 Risk Review Desk. I sometimes wonder what's more unbelievable, how quickly the entire world has changed or how effortlessly we have adapted, or so it seems. We may not have the familiarity of life pre-COVID, but boy, have we mastered the art of making lemonade. On this note, Edwin and JP, will you let us into 2020 from your perspectives and touch on the risk realities that defined the year?
Nolene, when I reflect on this year that was, I know we feel tremendous heartache for those who have suffered, and particularly those who have lost their loved ones. This is the most bitter pill to have swallowed in the COVID era. But I'm also amazed by how society has responded and how resilient we are. Nonetheless, these are unpredictable times, with the goalposts always shifting, and alone we can only achieve and overcome so much. So while the ubiquitous impact of COVID deflected a lot of attention around traditional risks, issues such as climate change, natural disasters, cybercrime, recession, corruption, political tensions did not abate. The pandemic has also obviously affected unemployment. Looking at commodities in the markets, understandably, oil prices also fell sharply. Quoting an online article which said, "The COVID-19 outbreak sent economies around the world into a tailspin, depressing the demand for oil. However, all have rebounded. Generally, the increasing number of vaccinations across the world has positively influenced global economic sentiment. Good rainfall experienced in the first quarter signals good harvests, which might indicate that the commercial agricultural sector will repeat a record performance. There has been unplanned increase in tax revenues as a result of increases in personal income tax, VAT, and exports, the latter positively impacting on the balance of payments."
I agree, Edwin. As we've seen, these risks didn't pause for COVID. For example, discussions around climate change and the importance of prioritizing responsible behaviors that accelerate efforts to save our planet have been a focal point for many years. These continued, but with less emphasis and at times overshadowed by the pandemic. Now, while it may have felt like COVID is the only word in our risk dictionaries, the reality is that risks don't take turns. But as we know, it wasn't all doom and gloom. In terms of the general developments that generate talkability, Trump's impeachment and the US elections were highlights, but perhaps not as riveting as Meghan's and Harry's exit as senior royals. I still haven't figured out what it really means, but simply put, I think it's safe to say they have cut the royal ties that bind.
Meghan and Harry's tell-all certainly suggests that much. Well, Edwin, it's clear that despite this pandemic, Bryte continues to soldier on. We wish the business every success with all the initiatives that are underway.
Yeah, we've clearly embarked on a whole lot, and I'm very proud of the innovations that have taken place over the last 18 months, whether it's product, systems, or technology. We'll keep on developing and innovating.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we are especially interested in your perspective around risk realities and how you've planned a few polls for you on today's session. We will greatly appreciate your participation. Now for the first poll. The question is, which risk do you think was most amplified by the pandemic? Was it A, unemployment, B, social instability, C, political instability? The poll will be on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. We will await the results, but I've got panelists in the studio, so possibly I will go to, as we wait for the results, Chris, I will ask you, which of the three do you predict would probably be number one?
Nolene, I think in my opinion, it would be unemployment without a doubt. We've seen it across the nation, across the world, in fact, where companies have had to retrench, cut back for their survival. Unfortunately, that has a ripple effect through so many facets of our lives. Crime increases, people are hungry. A devastating situation. And in my opinion, that would be top of the list, without a doubt. I could be wrong.
Well, we are waiting for the results to come in from your side. Again, the poll will pop up the bottom right-hand side of your screen. The questions are: which risk do you think was most amplified by the pandemic? A, was it unemployment? B, was it social instability? C, political instability? And Chris was predicting that it probably would be unemployment. But on the topic of politics, let's move on. Deputy CEO Colin recently interviewed renowned political and economic trend analyst JP Landman. There was a candid discussion around key socio-economic and political issues. JP, who joins Bryte for the second year, is known to many of you. For those who haven't interacted with JP, he is an author and an alumnus of both Harvard and Oxford, a visiting professor at the University of the Free State, was appointed by the President as a member of the National Planning Commission in 2015. For a very frank assessment, let's head over to our political desk.
JP, welcome to our political desk. It's great to again be chatting to you, and thank you for joining our business partner conference for the second consecutive year. You provided us with such informative insight last time that we had no choice but to invite you back for more. I must say, I really love your candid assessment of a range of issues and practical take on where to change gears.
Thank you, Colin. Much appreciated that I can be here again. You're a very special company.
So JP, as we start, I want to pose to you a few questions or scenarios many of us might be struggling or failing to really wrap our heads around. COVID has been modern day's most grueling litmus test for agility and resilience. In brief, what is your assessment of the South African government's response to the pandemic thus far?
I will give them 7 out of 10. Let's just look at what happened. A year ago, a little bit more, 15, 16 months ago, the government was very decisive in taking proactive measures, taking it early. They were unpopular measures and they pushed it through. And I think that helped to keep the numbers down. Later on, things got a little bit messy when we had all kinds of silly regulations, but I really don't blame the government for the regulations. But on the basic issue of keeping the people of South Africa safe, I think the government did well. Then at the beginning of this year, I think government slipped up a little bit in buying vaccines. Why do I say that? Because they put all their eggs, all their buying eggs, so to speak, in the COVAX basket. And we know that COVAX was not a successful project. Having said that, I must add, if you look at what's going on in the world, even if the South African government did buy vaccines earlier, I'm not sure we would have gotten it. India, which is the biggest vaccine manufacturer in the world, has stopped all exports. America, before last week's announcement by Biden, has exported no vaccines. We know that from next week we're going to get 950,000 doses per week. The second thing that I think they must be commended for is that they listened to people and they changed course as they went along. Mr. Modi in India, for example, is not doing that. His government is just blundering on.
You know, our rising debt to GDP ratio and intensifying concern, I must say, is only going to get worse. Experts predict stabilization at some 88.9% by 2025, 2026. So JP, what does this actually mean And how does this translate from an international investment perspective?
Colin, I think the issue of debt to GDP is the second most important question. The most important question is, can we keep on getting the money that we need to run the country? That's really question number one. And you can run into problems with that, whether your debt is sitting at 60% of GDP, or you can run into that problem when you sit at 100%. There's no good or bad number. Japan is sitting at 250. The United States is approaching 200. So South Africa at 88, 90%, are we really that far out? I don't think so. The more critical question, and that's the second part of your question, is can we access the international capital that we need to run South Africa? And there the answer is that we're doing quite well. The capital market is strong. Interest rates are sitting at about 9%. For SMMEs and smaller business, our interest rates set by the Reserve Bank are now at a record low. In the long term, of course, you want to bring the debt down. You're quite right. In the long term, you want to bring that number of 9% down. And that is linked to the debt to GDP ratio. But I must say, if we look at what government is doing around fiscal policy and expenditure of the state, I think we'll manage that down.
You started talking about regulations earlier. In your opinion, what are the enabling policy changes that you believe that our government has overlooked?
If you asked me the same question 8 months ago or a year ago, I would have said government is overlooking two important areas. The one is electricity, energy, and the second one is spectrum release, 5G. But things have changed a lot on that front in the last 6 months.
Would you say the prospects for recovery are strengthening or not?
Yeah, oh yes, definitely strengthening. And Colin, you see it in a very simple number. You can take all the economists in South Africa. They're all busy upgrading their growth forecast for the year. What happened? Well, we had a fantastic agricultural season, and of course there's an enormous commodity run, and we're doing very well from that. Then I think people are beginning to appreciate the fact that Mr. Ramaphosa is in charge of the government, he's in charge of the ANC. I think that's helping confidence that we're making progress with electricity, we're making progress with spectrum, we're making progress with infrastructure.
Can you talk about, or talk to us about the developments and the load shedding realities we are likely to live through over the next couple of years?
The information that we currently have indicate that we will have load shedding this winter through to September 2021. And the reason for that is simply that Eskom is on a very rigorous maintenance program. After September, we will still have load shedding, but I think on a declining scale.
And now, JP, what do you see as the other big infrastructure issue over the next 2 years, and what is the role of businesses in mitigating against this to bolster industry and economic agility?
The second biggest category of spending is water. In this year's budget, there's 106 billion rand. It's more than 9 billion a month for various water programs throughout the country. The next big category after that would be infrastructure, of which there's quite a wide variety, bridges, roads, and so on. What can business do around that? I think participation in the government's infrastructure fund. The second thing is, as always, business has got one priority, and that is to drive productivity.
Maybe let's move on now to vaccination. The South African government's vaccine rollout strategy has really faced many more roadblocks than we could have anticipated. With timelines regularly shifting, it is unclear how long it will take for us to reach herd immunity. Several countries have made phenomenal progress in their rollouts, but I will admit that these are not fair comparisons. Nevertheless, what are the implications of our slow pace on the businesses and economic recovery?
Look, if the pace remains as slow as it is currently, then that is not good news, because then it will take a long time to get to herd immunity. But as we've discussed earlier, from next week, from the week of the 24th, we're going to receive 950,000 doses per week. Vaccines only opened on Monday. This week there were 155 public sites, government sites, and 22 private sector sites. So we're only looking at about 177 sites. The idea is to take that number up to 3,000. Now, 177 now, 3,000 in say 6 or 8 weeks' time, you will see a massive increase in the pace. So I'm fairly optimistic that by the time this program is broadcast on 22 June, that we will see a big pickup, and towards December an even bigger further pickup. I'm not too worried about the vaccine process.
Now moving to South Africa's real pandemic. You know, the problem of unemployment has only worsened with record high figures quarter on quarter. What, in your opinion, has been the most beneficial or considered action taken by government to stimulate job creation? And on the other hand, what could businesses perhaps do a little differently to bring back more people into gainful employment?
It's a very, very good point. Look, I think government did one big thing. In October last year, the President announced that government is going to employ 800,000 people in public employment. What does that mean? It does not mean that you appoint 800,000 civil servants. You appoint people at a standard rate of 3,500 Rand a month, and those 800,000 jobs there's enough money, there's enough finance in the budget for this program to last for 4 years. More than nearly half of the 800,000 are in education. That is for teaching assistants, for janitors at schools, for people to maintain school buildings. Another 100,000 of those jobs is in the early childhood development sector. You bring people into the labor market, you give them some skills, and you stimulate demand at the bottom end of the market. I think that is the single most important employment action the government has taken. You ask me, what must the private sector do? And I think the private sector in South Africa must follow the example of the Germans. In Germany, almost nobody got retrenched. People went on to half a salary, half a wage, quarter of a wage. They didn't get their full wage. But you pay them something, plus the UIF benefit that they get from the German government, and people could keep going. They then use the spare capacity of people to train their employees. They send them on all kinds of courses. Now, Germany is a highly organized country. It's a rich country. They've got money. But I think we can learn from that.
Sure, JP, that's a great way to wrap it up. Once again, thank you so much for your insights. We really value and appreciate your candid and honest feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, JP, for sharing those insightful perspectives. Businesses and government will be well served to pay your attention to your suggestions. So now to the poll results. You will remember that before Colin spoke to JP, we asked the question, which risk do you think was most amplified by the pandemic? The results are in. Unemployment, 86%. Social instability, almost 11%, and you did, Chris, predict that in fact it will be the case. Now, ladies and gentlemen, JP Landman is joining us virtually today, so if you have questions for him, please use the chat function to share these. Before we move to our next segment, we have our second poll. What, in your opinion, could truly accelerate the recovery of our economy? Is it A, greater public and private sector collaboration, B, foreign direct investment, C, broadening our export markets, D, more intra-Africa trade, E, all of the above? The poll it'll pop up at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. So while we wait for the results to come in, let me come to you, JP, and ask you a few questions. What, in your view, is the single most impactful development that can tip the balance in our favor?
Nolene, given where our country is at the moment, I think all of the above. But we'll also need meaningful job creation, and we will need to have significant infrastructure spending as well, if we wish to make a steady and a significant progress on this journey. Thinking of all of these, something that is in common to them is partnership. It is something I firmly believe in, that we need to have more of a material partnership between government and business, not only here in South Africa, but all over Africa, that can make a big contribution to the economy. Yeah. Successful partnerships is key if you want to have socioeconomic development. And that is something that Bryte in itself is. We are firmly invested in having sustainable long-term partnerships for all the stakeholders in our value chain.
Thank you very much, JP. That's a compelling perspective. Now getting back to our lineup, heat waves, fires, floods, cyclones, etc. are persisting realities thanks to climate change. While much is out of our control, there's still a lot we can do to safeguard people and property. To discuss just that, we are joined by Cloud, Edwin, JP and Chris at our Weather Report desk. The issue of climate change is one that many aren't grasping the full extent of, and the reality is that this continues to be the greatest persistent threat to humankind. Understandably, emission reductions is an urgent priority and one that industries and the businesses that manage their risks need to collectively drive. So, to kick off our weather report, we are joined by Edwin for a discussion around climate change and related risks.
With 51 billion tons of greenhouse gases released annually, climate change remains prevalent and rapidly increasing risk. Studies suggest that more than 800 million people are among those most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Businesses are more answerable from a sustainability perspective than ever before. The consequences of non-compliance, not doing the right thing, by default, could change from financial losses to reputational risks to diminishing relevance.
JP and Cloud, can you take us through some of the incidents making headlines over the past year?
Every year as a society, we react to catastrophic natural disasters with numerous questions, but also a level of surprise. As underwriters, we deal with facts, and we base our prediction on the analysis of these facts and scientific data to determine changing natural patterns, identify risk trends, and to inform ways in which we can better assist our customers in lowering their exposure to such events. Looking at just the past year, the destructive forces of Cyclone Amphan in May last year killed more than 85 people in Bangladesh and India. 3 months later, battering an already ailing Haitian population was Hurricane Laura, which went on to wreak havoc in the USA.
In 2020, on top of the high rate of COVID infections and casualties, the country suffered its unequal share of catastrophes, including the worst floods in 45 years. Closer to home, a May headline read, East Africa faces triple crisis of COVID-19, locusts, and floods. Each year tends to bring more of the same in terms of natural catastrophes, but in varying degrees. Unsurprisingly, the World Economic Forum Global Risks Report in 2021 ranks extreme weather, climate action failure, and human environmental damage at the top in terms of likelihood. After infectious disease and livelihood crisis, extreme weather ranked the third highest under the category of clear and present danger.
Chris, let's talk practically about what progress looks like and what businesses can realistically do in the context of climate change and related disasters.
The public and private sector are better placed than ever before to preempt certain exposures and put in place measures to mitigate its effect. But what it boils down to, in some scenarios, is baby steps, and in other instances, nothing but a colossal leap will do. On the periphery of colossal in terms of regulation, the great news is that more governments are increasingly prioritizing climate change. President Ramaphosa signed the carbon tax bill into law in 2019, compelling the reduction of greenhouse emissions. The South African government recently established the Presidential Climate Change Coordinating Commission. One of the most significant outcomes of this has been the announcement that Eskom is going to transition away from coal. On the bright side, businesses are also much more serious about climate-related issues. In 2020, the total global investment in clean energy was in excess of $300 billion US. Specific to natural catastrophic events, the value lies in understanding trends, identifying geographic vulnerabilities that could negatively affect businesses, and ensuring layers of risk mitigation to ensure early detection and response. It is this mindset that will reduce the exposure of society and enterprises. Developments must consider floodplains or areas that may be more susceptible to flooding, potential fire pathways, etc. Structures that avoid the concentration of pressure to reduce the impacts of cyclones and tornadoes or buffer zones. Of equal importance is the understanding of historical issues in a region. Conversely, drought is an issue plaguing communities in many parts of the world. Research suggests that the number of people facing extreme droughts may double by the turn of the century, but Botswana ranks high in terms of countries with the highest drought risk. Another prominent risk is that of fire, which is probably more commonly experienced on different scales. It is evident that basic measures such as fire, risk monitoring, technology, sprinkler systems, and alternate water sources for firefighting could prove invaluable if disaster strikes. Other common threats often relate to the storage of flammable materials and the lack of maintenance. Equally, aging electrical, human error, and the lack of training and enforcement of safety protocols are of concern. We are all rather familiar with the shortage of fire engines, particularly in the Johannesburg area. So in the spirit of prevention or moderation, being better than cure, businesses will be well served to work alongside risk engineers to put in place multiple safeguards to mitigate effects, but equally to ensure employees understand vulnerabilities and are equipped to play their part in minimizing the effects of natural catastrophes. Also important is ensuring that the right types and level of insurance covers are in place to enhance business resilience in challenging times.
Are there opportunities that businesses may be failing to meaningfully leverage?
Absolutely. From an expanded focus on cleaner energy, which has longer-term environmental and financial benefits, or to maintaining an innovation and conservation mindset, whether it's through process changes or new products or services that are environmentally friendly, but also help to increase profit. Energy and chemical company Sasol's shift to diversify into green hydrogen, having previously produced grey hydrogen from coal, is among the many notable steps being taken by carbon-intensive businesses. In its simpler form though, organizations just need to look at their own water and electricity bills and the impact on profitability when greener energy sources and greater water conservation methods are adopted.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. So before we played the video, we had our second poll, and the question was, what, in your opinion, could truly accelerate the recovery of our economy? And the question that was posed, or the questions that were posed were, is it greater public and private sector collaboration? Is it foreign direct investment? Is it broadening our export markets? Is it more intra-Africa trade, or is it all of the above? The results are in. All of the above was 78%. Second was greater public and private sector collaboration. Thank you very much for taking part in our second poll. Now, for many of us, it's difficult to see past COVID, but it's imperative that we appreciate the continued prevalence and impact of other exposures. Ladies and gentlemen, please send us your questions via the chat function. Remember, there are some great prizes that could be making their way to you. On this note, let's take a short commercial break.
Seeing into the future is no easy task. And in challenging times, being prepared for as many eventualities as possible is a Bryte decision. Welcome to Bryte. We're a premier proactive business risk insurance specialist based in Southern Africa, where our Bright Sparks create bright ideas to help our customers make the bright moves. We apply our unparalleled sector insights, proven expertise and foresight to identify and holistically manage customer risk. Together with our brokers, we partner with our customers to protect their businesses and ensure livelihoods. Our Bright Sparks develop fit-for-purpose solutions that help our customers make bolder and brighter moves. Our products and services fall under three broad categories: business insurance, specialist and personal insurance, which includes travel insurance, and funeral cover provided by our life business. Our growing expertise spans various sectors, from property, engineering and agriculture to hospitality, travel, and real estate management. Regardless of the size of your business, Bryte has a solution for you. Our commercial insurance cover provides uncomplicated solutions and focused expertise to large, medium, and small businesses. We know that many small business owners and professionals, like doctors, lawyers, and architects, run their businesses from their homes. we have a solution that combines personal and business insurance. We also understand the unique challenges facing the local agricultural sector, from dairy to crop farming. Our wineries insurance solutions have been created to safeguard wine producers against the exposures specific to their industry, covering events from accidental wine spoilage to wine tank damage and loss of income. Turning to our specialist insurance category, Bryte's extensive range of products addresses the distinctive risks across the hospitality, travel, fine art, jewelry, marine, logistics, construction, and motor industries. Our extensive liability insurance offering is available to diverse industries, and there's more. Our Sharia-compliant value proposition provides an alternative source of insurance protection to customers based on an oversight system that complies with Sharia principles. Products that adopt a philosophy of shared risk responsibility, shared guarantee, collective assurance, and a mutual undertaking. And finally, a newer category is Bryte Life's diverse range of funeral policy solutions. Bryte Life understands the diverse needs of extended South African families, and our comprehensive offering provides financial peace of mind to families during their time of deep loss, paying out a lump sum which can cover funeral costs such as catering, tent and chair hire, and groceries. So, for bright minds with unparalleled sector insights, proven expertise, and foresight, for compelling risk management solutions specially designed for Southern African businesses, for trusted expertise and an invested partner, call us now or visit our website for more. Bryte, approach risk with purpose.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Our next segment is the Market Realities Report, which is hosted by Yolandi van Dijk, Bryte's Chief Financial Officer. Yolandi is in conversation with Dr. Thabi Leoga, who is an award-winning economic analyst and strategist, a former Sunday Times columnist and regular media contributor, an advisor to the Fees Commission, and former Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene, an alumni of the London School of Economics and Wits University. Over to you, Yolandi and Dr. Leoga.
Dr. Leoga, let's jump right into it. If we put COVID-19 aside, there's many other global developments that happened in 2020. If I can think of some, think about Brexit, we think about the US trade wars, we think about the end of the Trump era. If we think about all of that, can you perhaps contextualize for us the effect of all of those, and maybe some others that you've seen in 2020?
I think that President Trump was a very divisive character. The US typically is provides guidance to our economies. And without that guidance, we were a little bit lost. You know, you saw it in how erratic our currencies were as a result of what he said. And which leads me to the second issue, which he started, was this trade war between China and the US. And how that impacted us, South Africa, is actually through a lot of the products that we import from China. In terms of Brexit has had its pros and cons for South Africa, particularly. Having a UK with over 70 million population, part with the rest of the region, the European Union, meant that we could negotiate differently and favorably with the UK than we did with the EU.
So Dr. Leoga, if we have to bring it a little bit closer to home, what's your medium-term view on the economy for South Africa?
The South African economy worries me slightly. We're not putting in place policies that would allow us to grow beyond 2021. So what we need is to implement reforms. I always say that our problems are many, but they're not unsurmountable. So we need to focus on agriculture, manufacturing and mining. And a fourth one that I would add is tourism.
Everyone is looking for a glimmer of hope in the economy. Are there any other local market challenges, maybe some social, economical issues or political issues that you see that could be to the detriment of that growth, or perhaps in the positive side be a catalyst?
For South Africa, we announced 500 billion rands that was supposed to be injected to revive small and business entities. And out of that 500, 200 was supposed to be extended by our commercial banks. And unfortunately, only 25 billion has been extended. We are at that stage where we should sign checks and support our businesses, because that's one way of reviving our economy.
If we look at the first year of this pandemic, that has also brought out the emphasis on all our supply chains and our over-dependency to an extent on global supply chains, and the flip side of that being our shortage of local supply chains. What is your view on that?
For countries like South Africa, we couldn't even import certain products. Therefore, we couldn't complete the manufacturing process, which delayed everything, including the exporting of the finished goods, which then impacted on the revenues that we get as a country. It did then make a lot of countries look inwards, and there was a lot of talk about localization. Now, there's pros and cons to that, as you mentioned. Localization is good in that we're now reviving companies, small businesses, mom and pop shops that used to make little nuts and bolts that were overlooked because it was cheaper to import in bulk from Asia, for instance. And so these shops had to then, and industries, factories had to compete with cheap, let's say, Asian goods. The negative part of localization is that you need to invest in many companies. And invest in infrastructure, invest in the education that is needed to support localization. But then if every company looked inwards, or every country looked inwards, that would mean that there's certain products that we just cannot supply and we cannot make in this country, either because of the lack of expertise, or that whatever product it is, we just don't have in the country. Even if it's a natural resource, we'd have to import it. I do believe in globalization. I think that we've survived this long with globalization. We wouldn't be having this conversation without these equipments if it wasn't for globalization, and many of them are not made 100% in South Africa. So we need a very happy medium.
If we look at some other developing nations that might be facing similar conditions and harsh market realities similar to South Africa, what do you believe are the three most important lessons that we can learn from them?
The first one for me is the lack of prioritization in the health sector. And that in all these years we haven't really invested resources in health, be it medical science research, investing in our laboratories, even encouraging people to go into health research and medical science. And so, and this is just not in South Africa, this is on the continent and in emerging markets, that we had to rely on. And we rely on the developed world and their scientists and their vaccines, and that we haven't developed a vaccine in South Africa in the past 25 years. So the pandemic has made me realize that we need to invest in health, in hospitals, in research, and this is not just South Africa, but the African continent. The second one is we never stockpiled PPEs. We still do import masks and gloves, something as basic as a glove. Thirdly, whatever decisions that we make, from a health to a development to, it has to be regional. Building hospitals, ensuring that everyone is vaccinated, even this is going beyond just this pandemic, making sure that we have investments in the right places, health, education, etc. The continent provides us with great opportunities. I'm very excited about the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, and I hope that it's expedited and the regulatory framework is put in place, because that is also a center of growth for many of our companies and many of our sectors. We have over 1 billion population on the continent, and a young population, a thriving population. I also think that we need to adopt 4IR quicker, and that would also help us grow our economy and the continental economy.
Dr. Liauka, thank you once again.
Thank you for an insightful, thought-provoking take on current market realities and the dynamics at play, Dr. Liauka. Audience, just a reminder that Dr. Liauka also joins us virtually today, so please feel free to ask any questions you would like her to answer. Remember, by participating, you stand the chance to win a lovely goodie bag. Moving ahead, while chaos underlined 2020, there were still many things we were able to appreciate and perhaps even enjoy. So in keeping with the spirit, our next poll is one that is light-hearted and an attempt to very curiously look at some of the interesting things you got up to since the lockdown. For poll number 3, please share with us, what is the most interesting or funny thing you got up to prompted by the lockdown? Was it maybe A, I learned how to cook or bake, B, I completed a DIY project, C, I spent quality time with my family in ways I hadn't done previously, D, I took up a new hobby which has helped my mental and physical health. Please fill in the poll. The poll will be on the bottom right hand of the screen. Let's ask the gentleman. Chris, what do you think is the one thing I did that I'd never done before during lockdown?
You or me?
No, me.
Oh, you.
It's all about me, because why do you think it's about you? It's about me. So take a guess.
Probably a bit of DIY.
No. What did you get up to? Because the reason why he's saying DIY is because he started a DIY project and a year later it's 50% done. Am I wrong?
No, that is correct. You did say completed DIY project.
What did you attempt to do?
We're going to avoid that topic. It was a DIY project which is not completed.
JP, no, it's not. JP, what did you get up to?
I started to cycle mountain biking, so to keep a bit fit.
Fantastic. Edwin, you learned how to bake.
Yeah, I did a bit of both of what they tried, but I think the one that I almost mastered is because we were in such confined spaces, I learned how to handle conflict.
In your family. Thank you very much. We will await those poll results. You've got the questions. Now for our next segment, we move to the aptly titled the Pandemonium desk, which aims to bring some level of order. Over to Bryte's Chief Marketing Officer, Nicholas Francis, and its Engineering Manager, David Chow, who are joined by Colin Mulepe. They are in conversation with the hilarious and fearless character created by the award-winning satirist, writer, presenter and actor Lesego Tlabi, aka Coconut Cal's. Before Coconut Cal's is unleashed, I must share some that Lesego is an alumni of Brunel University in London, the New York Film Academy, Columbia University. Without further ado, we head over to our Pandemonium desk.
Welcome to the Pandemonium desk. I am Coconut Cal, CEO of Bryte Insurance, and with me is Bryte's Deputy Chief Scavenger, Colin Mulepe, and its Chief Marketing Indian, Nicholas Francis, and of course, Engineering Manager, David Chow. You will notice none of these people is white because we're all about transformation, guys. Anyway, Nicholas, in the spirit of transformation and making lemonade, please tell us, what is a pandemic?
So, Kels, however I answer, I'm inclined to think that there's no way I can match your humorous take. So I give up. But I think it's got to do with us taking the virus somewhere. So I'm not sure. What is a pandemonium?
So easily. This is not like your people. A pandemic is an epidemic with a passport. But on a more serious note, guys, the upheaval that COVID-19 has caused has obviously reached our shores, and it's one that we perhaps quite haven't digested yet. And I suspect many of us have paused for a moment to feel, but then being the resilient beings that we are, we just soldier ahead with as much determination as the DA. Now, Nicholas and David, let's take a moment to reflect on the very thing that has consumed people the world over.
So, Kels, pandemics are certainly not new. but COVID-19 truly is something we could have not anticipated nor prepared for. It's forever changed the way we look at pandemics and how we really respond to it. As much as we attempt to predict and respond to these risks, we will continue to fall short. Even underwriting businesses, multinationals spread across diverse geographies, can predict only so much. This pandemic brought even the best run countries and healthcare systems literally to their knees. Now, according to the UN's International Labour Organization, almost 9% of global working hours were lost in 2020 due to the pandemic. That's equivalent to 255 million full-time jobs, approximately 4 times greater than the number lost during the 2009 global financial crisis.
Wow. David, those are sobering facts indeed. I mean, to think COVID-19 is actually the second pandemic to face the world in just a decade. COVID has shaken every nation, of course, some more than others. You know, from the worst of its effects to job losses, a range of workforce and operational challenges, mental and emotional anxiety, recessions and restrictions that many democracies have never before endured. It's been an uphill journey.
So on the subject of emotional discussions, and I don't mean the emotional roller coaster that was me tirelessly defending John C. and Hazen's qualifications, let's now address the elephant in the room. So the pandemic may have dominated the news, but short-term insurers also had their fair share of the limelight. So please tell me, why have you given customers like me the runaround at a time when we needed you the most?
While outbreak cover isn't new for insurers, the reality is that insurance policies generally cover infections on site or within a specified radius. Policies were never intended to cover lockdown, nor factor in such a prolonged period of disruption. We always endeavor to support our clients to the best of our abilities. While the claims assessment process considers the policy wording, we continue to assess each claim based on its own merit.
Thank you very much, David, and happy Chinese Year of the Ox. I believe that is your people's year. Now, this global pandemic and policies have very defined conditions, I get that, but you guys certainly have decent reserves for such monsoons, and Nicholas, you know obviously very well about monsoons, but what stops you from paying out all the claims?
Well, girls, unfortunately, we do not live in an ideal world, and as much as there are many things we would love to do, we all operate within certain confines. You know, the specifics of any insurance agreement aside, the harsh reality is that businesses exist to be sustainable, and none have unlimited reserves for that matter. You know, it is therefore important to strike that essential balance to ensure practical decision making that secures the sustainability of the majority. Having said that, and recognizing the impact of COVID, we did extend over 60 million in relief to a range of customers since the onset of the pandemic. One more thing, we also invited customers to engage with us on other ways in which we could assist to alleviate some of the pressure points. You know, where claims met the criteria, we endeavored to pay these promptly. You know, to date, we have actually settled over 6,000 claims, which is almost in the range of about R500 million.
Wow, now that's quite a huge number, Colin. I don't think Jacob Zuma would do a good job reading it. But I guess if we all had bottomless money pits or a Gupta phone number, Nick, then we could do truly as we please and please everyone in the process. But accepting that we do not live in an idyllic world and there's some limits to everything, Nicholas, what has stood out for you since this pandemic has become our reality?
So just on the number, Kals, before we go into there, I'm on pay-as-you-go, so I'm not allowed to dial international numbers in the UAE. On this note, I must say that I have been deeply encouraged by the next level of resilience people have displayed. Despite losses, fears, and uncertainty, communities and nations stood in solidarity, demonstrating courage, compassion, gratitude, and strength. We have seen green shoots of new beginnings. For me, the most exciting has been how COVID catapulted a remote working culture.
So I must admit that remote working has been among the more positive developments.
But Nicholas, for you, what were the aspects that you enjoyed and perhaps even laughed at?
So apart from making lots of pineapple beer and banana bread, I must admit I enjoyed the virtual look into people's lives, kind of like the Truman Show. It's nice to see the more human side to some people. And for me, it made people more relatable. How can we forget the funny virtual boo-boos, including a full view of some people's waist-up Zoom attire and the ones where kids and pets hilariously interrupted meetings. In a manner of speaking, we literally saw it all.
Well, one of my personal favorites, just linking to anecdotes now, is when the news channel had Spider-Man on for some reason. And just like past presidents, obviously Spider-Man, South African Spider-Man, is better at dancing than at his job. But now, David, in terms of positives, what has stood out for you?
It's how we live differently. The rise of virtual family events, from birthdays to weddings, became the new norm for all of us. We saw the emergence of drive-through weddings. The internet kept us connected, helped many of us stay positive and sane.
I think we also have seen now the emergence of digital conferences like the one we're having today. But my favorite thing was how everybody used a mask that wasn't a mask. There was bandanas, there was t-shirts, and I even saw underwear. But David, can you tell us more about this process?
So yeah, but as much as we will always endeavor to find the silver lining, the reality is life is a series of ups and downs. An interesting article I read stated that extreme global connectivity has meant that the next epidemic is often only a flight away. I mean, practically speaking though, Nicholas, how does one prepare for the inconceivable?
There's a lot we have learned that will stand with us in good stead when the next outbreak or epidemic or pandemic strikes. From regular risk reviews and tracking emerging outbreak patterns to building a more resilient, agile business, to empowering employees to work remotely and efficiently, and being more participative in socio-economic challenges. The list is quite long, but what it boils down to is navigating future risks through the lenses of our extraordinary pandemic experiences and insights so we may meet the next challenge with greater success.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for educating us and entertaining us. I hope this conference comes with subtitles because I did not hear anything any of you said. And just so you know, I may be Caucasian adjacent, but I still believe in wearing masks and sanitizing and in the vaccine. And in the wise words of Dr. William Kize, I may not be health minister anymore, but at least I have Bryte insurance.
Kels, you were true to form and certainly did not pull any punches. Well done, Team Bryte, for your candid responses. I'd like to go back to our poll. I'd asked those questions before Kels came in. The question was, what is the most interesting or funny thing you got up to prompted by lockdown? It was, I learned how to cook or bake. 12% of you did that. I completed a DIY project. 16% actually. I spent quality time with my family in ways I hadn't done previously. Majority of you did that, 51%. Well done, because we all bonded and it was absolutely lovely. Now for some audience questions. We have JP Landman and Dr. Tlabi Leoga joining us virtually. Welcome, JP and Dr. Leoga.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Now, the first question is for you, JP. And the question goes, there are more countries with similar limitations as South Africa that are achieving great things in areas where we may be lacking. So if you could replicate 3 policies, practices, investments that you believe to be game changers, which would you choose, JP?
That's a very interesting question. I think there's actually only one that we need to do, but let me just motivate it a little bit. In the beginning of the 2000s, there was a research commission on which Trevor Manuel, that was South Africa's finance minister for very long, also served. It was led by a chap called Michael Spence. Michael Spence got the Nobel Prize for Economics in 2001. And what made this commission very interesting was that they didn't look at theory. They said, let's go and look at those countries in the world that has had the best growth, and let's see what we can learn from that. It was a very interesting approach. And they came up with what I call a club of 13. Of the 198 nations in the world, there are only 13 that met the test that the commission set. And the test was that the country for 25 years must have grown at 7% or more per year. It's a very, very high bar. They identified countries and they looked at those 13 countries. Now, I'm going to give you the 5 things that the Commission learned from that club of 13, and you can decide for yourself where you think South Africa fits in. First of all, be part of the world. Sell to the world what they want, buy from them what they can give you. Secondly, you need very sound fiscal and monetary policies. I think we have that in South Africa. Those two, I think we meet. Number 3, let markets broadly allocate capital. Give us sort of 6 out of 10 for that particular point. There are areas where we don't allow markets to allocate. Think SAA. Up till now, think electricity. But broadly speaking, we've got a market-driven economy. You must be a high savings and investment society. Now, that South Africa is not. We lose that one completely. We fail that test. And then the last one is you need a 3C government. 3C government. It is a government that is committed to economic growth, that's competent to deliver economic growth, and which is taken seriously. In other words, it has credibility. Competence, commitment, credibility. And I would say, Nolene, of these 5 things, of which we meet about 3 to 3.5, for me, the most important one that we're not following is we haven't built a capable state. We haven't done it at the provincial level, certainly not. We haven't done it at the local government level. And I must say, I'm hugely enthused by the fact that the president yesterday afternoon made the point that local governments and local communities should make their towns attractive enough for investors to come and invest there. It speaks to the issue of building a capable state. I would take that out as the single most important things, because most of the other, we do well enough that we can cope. Let's fix our governance.
All right, JP, let's leave it there for now. Thank you very much for your comments. Our second question is directed at Dr. Tlabi Leoga. Dr. Leoga, appreciating the limited resources our country has and the persisting pandemic-inflicted challenges, if you could choose to fix just one thing, what would that be and why?
So for a very long time, I think since actually 2001, the South African government has been looking at spectrum. And here we are, 20 years later, and we still don't have the sufficient spectrum to provide broadband to South Africans, to all South Africans. So one thing that I would definitely do is release the necessary spectrum. And why I've pointed out spectrum is because the pandemic has really brought to the fore the need for communication, the need for we're all working from home, conducting meetings using Wi-Fi, and not all South Africans have the privilege of conducting meetings and working from home. And so what Spectrum would do is lower the price of broadband and allow for all South Africans to have access to the internet. And just additionally, we saw with education and how children, especially those who are in rural schools, did not go to school last year as a result of the lack of broadband and also its expense. So the release of spectrum is one thing I'll do. One thing I'll do without, so I've also realized because of the pandemic, there are many government departments that have actually not, that are not really needed. And I'll put them as in a lower tier, make them agencies of the state rather than government departments. And, government departments such as public sector administration, that could easily be, a smaller team that is an administrative second tier arm of the government and not a fully fledged department. I would also do away with public enterprises, for instance, and take those assets and allocate it in their relative, the government departments like energy and ESCOM, for instance. And what that would do is that it would ease the pressure of government from a financial perspective. And we can allocate those resources in areas that would generate growth, which is really what we need. We need more investments. And right now we have projects that are actually consumption-based and are crowding out investments.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Leoga. Don't forget that Dr. Leoga and JP are available to take any of your questions. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our next segment is a word that comes to mind when I think 2020. To present the disruption report, we once again welcome Chris, and joining him is Bryte's Head of Business Support Services, Sadiq Isaacs.
Sadiq, I'm certain you will agree that disruption has become such a normalized part of our being since this pandemic penetrated our borders. It has heightened levels of anxiety and stress for so many, but in some ways strengthened our resolve.
Chris, yes, I certainly agree. Correspondingly, there's diminished economic stability the world over. We have unfortunately seen so many businesses become casualties of the pandemic, particularly the SMMEs. As it stands, how business operates has evolved, bringing with it perhaps in equal measure risk and opportunity.
Sadiq, with so much of what we are familiar with being thrown into the chaos, one of the common threads is how technology adoption has risen rapidly. Digital acceleration has played a key role in enhancing customer interactions, improving scalability, flexibility, and optimizing business operations.
I couldn't agree with you more, Chris. I think digitization has been an enabler for improving business operations. Interestingly, with an increased number of business also operating from home, this is certainly demanding a revised approach to risk management. This in turn is leading to product and service review on a larger scale than anticipated. There's also recognition of a major opportunity for simplified commercial policies that provide the basic covers with bespoke value adds.
Indeed. But speaking of numbers, did you know that only 22% of small businesses are insured? Businesses are also trying to find cover which they can switch on and off. This is a requirement that insurers must pay careful attention to, so effective and relevant risk management solutions are made available to a sector that is extremely vulnerable. Sadiq, with businesses moving people to work from home, premises became unoccupied and so many vehicles were effectively stationary. How did Bryte react to this situation?
Companies were allowed to move their equipment such as PCs, other essentials to employees' homes with the same cover remaining intact. We extended our unoccupied clause in the policy from 30 days to the end of the lockdown period.
Sadiq, how did lockdown negatively affect the customer in terms of their risk covers?
The pandemic and lockdown has showcased a business and economic crisis that was looming long before the outbreak. The minute we went into lockdown, we experienced a significant amount of calls for discounted premium. Bryte participated almost immediately by providing premium relief to customers across various industries, but we have also seen underinsurance rise as customers attempted to cut back. That is obviously very concerning, compromising cover and having to contend with disappointment at claim stage. Customers has to be clear on their exposures, the ways in which to prevent or moderate risk, but they also need to understand the specific covers they have, together with limits, so they are adequately de-risking. What then could our broker partners do to enhance the resilience of their clients' businesses?
Sadiq, that's a very, very important question. As trusted advisors, theirs is one that comes with great responsibility in terms of proactively creating awareness of the evolving risk landscape and guiding on exposure mitigation measures that should be applied. It is also about helping clients understand their policies, covers, limits, and specific conditions to avoid any confusion and disappointment, but also to manage expectations at all times.
But equally important is the role that Bryte plays in assisting brokers, assisting clients, and working together with brokers to ensure that we protect the assets of our clients.
Thanks, Chris and Sadiq, for your succinct assessment and the practical advice. Now for another segment with the also entertaining Coconut Cows. We're joined by Nicholas, Colin and Bryte's Head of Human Resources, Ncumi Samchali, at our Cyber Sense Bureau. The team will provide their view of some of the cyber technology trends that are rapidly taking shape. They also share some valuable advice on how to safeguard businesses against the many rapidly evolving cyber threats.
How's it, guys? It's me, Kels, CEO of Bryte Insurance. Welcome to today. So we're here to talk about digital vibes, digital technologies, excuse me, which have become entrenched in our daily lives. Now, just the thought of the dark ages used to be scary until we got to stage 4 load shedding. So here we are once again. And anyway, despite being often disconnected from my family, my friends, and millions of fellow DA supporters from all over the world, there are some positives. And here to talk about how technology has revolutionized so many critical aspects of life today, I'm joined by Nicholas and his 2 Skibbenga friends, Colin and a lady whose name I just refuse because my neck is sore. Nicholas, we know about remote working, and let's now talk about remote surgeries.
Charles, technology has really made distance a non-challenge and redefined what is now possible in so many respects. I can't think of many things that trump the fact that surgeons are able to operate on a patient without being in the room, let alone the country or the continent. I mean, 20 years ago, the first complete surgery, also known as the Lindbergh operation, was conducted by Dr. Jacques Marescau in New York on a patient thousands of kilometers away in France. Just on that note, the healthcare industry and governments are increasingly recognizing the potential of telehealth in improving patient outreach and health outcomes while reducing healthcare costs.
Okay, but now even though technology is undoubtedly among the greatest contributions to the modern world, second only to Helen Ziller, we are always at risk because of hackers. Am I right?
Absolutely, Kels. You know, while technology opens up a world of tremendous opportunities, the risks can also be debilitating for businesses, especially those that do not prepare for it. Close to 1% of the world's GDP is being spent on cybersecurity alone. Businesses are coughing up to $1 trillion annually. You know, just to put it into perspective, that's 35% of India's GDP and almost 3 times South Africa and Botswana's combined GDP. I mean, in South Africa alone, the average cost of data breach is estimated to be approximately 40.2 million, and the scale of these breaches are quite enormous. Just looking at the recent breach that we had in South Africa, 24 million people and nearly 800,000 businesses were left exposed. You know, the pandemic has also fed the monster in many ways. In a manner of speaking, within mere months of the pandemic, more than 4,000 malicious COVID-related internet sites popped up, and experts argue that the probability of a cyber attack occurring in 2021 has doubled since 2019. I mean, if I may ask Ncumi for an example, you know, how often in a day do you think a cyber crime is committed?
I think it's close to 8,000 incidences in just a day. So basically, an incident every 11 seconds, which is the time it took me to utter the statement. It's scary, no? As technology evolves and the access to it expands, so too does the level of risk, severity, and the instances of cybercrime. By the end of next year, which is 2022, experts suggest that at least 1 billion Africans will have access to the internet. So clearly this is a risk that needs great priority and urgency. Cybercrime also poses a threat to the national security of African countries.
Okay, so what you said is very, very important, and I'm so glad that I took Zulu up until matric so I could understand everything you said. But Ncumi, I got the name right. And if you can answer this in English, please, just because not everybody understands Zulu, okay? I understand that this is just the tip of the iceberg, or for Africa, a gentle breeze in the desert versus a violent sandstorm.
I love the home ground analogy. For sure, especially when you consider instances where the National Security Agency of Nigeria and South Africa's municipal government have each been victims of attacks that shut down services and leaked very sensitive information. Cyber criminals are not only targeting big businesses. We all probably get hundreds of texts and emails in a week that are disguised as phishing attacks. How many of you have heard of or have been victims of account being hacked, webcams or microphones being turned on?
Woo, okay, I guess I better make sure my PC stays covered just in case. Okay, we're still safe. Anyway, this probably means that we need to exercise caution when having very private discussions such as this one or sharing sensitive information, because you never know who's watching. Helen watches us all the time. And even your wife will testify at the commission. So Nicholas, over to you.
I suppose what's equally concerning is that our SMEs, who have had a particularly difficult time over the past 14 months, continue to be the fastest growing targets. The range of issues is diverse, from a significant increase in malicious websites and social media messaging, compromised business emails, cyber stalking, personal data leaks, and cyberbullying. When we think bullying, we generally think kids, but cyberbullying can affect any number of people and take many forms.
Okay, so I just recently found out through your guys' words that cyber stalking is a crime. So I do have a few letters of apology to send out before we continue. But whilst I'm doing that, Colin, please can you give us some of the insights on the key themes that are gaining traction faster than ever before?
Absolutely, Kels. I mean, simply put, there are 3 Ds that I would like to suggest that all of us must familiarize ourselves with, and together our customers as well need to be keeping abreast with. The first one is disruption. We are likely to see an increase in the use of ransomware to hijack the Internet of Things. The second one is distortion. Bots and automated sources are being used to spread misinformation and fake news. As you know, we recently nearly held a national baby shower. And the third one is, deterioration. Rapid advances in smart technologies and conflicting demands posed by evolving national security could negatively impact the enterprise's ability to effectively control data security.
Okay, so just to remind everybody, it's disruption, distortion, and deterioration, also known as the motto for the EFF. So in terms of the specifics, what should the public and private sector both be mindful of?
Businesses ought to test systems on a routine basis. Many use white hats, those who hack systems to identify vulnerabilities, to spot any issues before hackers can gain access to sensitive data.
Colin, just to interrupt you, you are going to have Black Twitter asking why there are only Caucasian hats and not also black hats, but continue. But I hate to admit it, in this case, Gemengers actually sound like smart people. But how do you distinguish between reality and a sham?
I suppose forearmed is forewarned, so it's important to be aware of developing trends. Know when to question what seems authentic, and of course employing all reasonable measures to safeguard one's business or oneself. From a business perspective, cybersecurity tools such as antivirus software, which must be updated at recommended intervals, and firewalls should be just as important. It is clear that a culture of awareness, education, and action is imperative. Cybersecurity training for all employees and service providers within the value chain must be prioritized. Training for key personnel must be ongoing to ensure that they are all aware of the rapidly evolving threats.
Adding to your points, Nicholas, the trend of people bringing their own devices, which is BYOD, is a growing problem. This practice should be a huge no-no. An additional concern with more people working remotely is secure internet access. Encrypting devices, confidential documents, ensuring automatic device locking, automated security authentication and authorization requirements, and regular backups are among some of the things that can be done with relative ease. We also encourage our customers to partner with bodies and organizations that analyze cybersecurity data and predict trends, that also create awareness of the modus operandi and common exposure threats.
That's great advice, Misa. I guess the important takeout is not to allow any level of complacency to creep in. The cyber world is the fastest evolving, and it stands to reason that continuous monitoring, policy and protocol adherence and awareness is an imperative.
I do have to go, but at least I can say that I'm not firing any one of you. You all keep your jobs for today. But what I can say as well is that technology and digital evolution is exciting, and there are so many great things we can achieve with it. We just have to be vigilant and not let scammers take advantage of us. So on that note, we conclude right here from the Cyber Sense Bureau. Piers Morgan, back to you in studio.
Thanks again, Coconut Cows and Team Bryte, for making some daunting topics more digestible. On the topic of digestible, JP as well as Chris, I have some burning questions to ask you. If I may start with you, JP. Despite the Supreme Court ruling, there are numerous business interruption claims that have been partially honoured, and the processing of others has been slow. How does Bryte explain this?
First, my colleague Cloud Singwame, which is the head of claims, can't be with us today, but I'm happily responding to this.
Thank you.
Let me start off to say, by now, Bryte has complete the processing of more than 92% of all COVID claims that's been presented to us. That means that we've by now settled and paid more than 500 million rand for those claims. It might be helpful just to remind ourselves a bit that COVID represents a loss that is 20 times bigger than the largest hailstorm that Gauteng have seen, or 10 times larger than the 2016-17 Knysna fire losses. In terms of pending claims, ever since the Supreme Court that you mentioned passed a judgment towards the end of December, our claims colleagues have worked tirelessly to settle these claims very swiftly. We should all remember that a COVID business interruption loss is significantly more complex than a hail claim or even a fire claim. You need to consider the policy with all the terms and conditions, the notification periods for the losses, the indemnity periods, and most importantly, you need to consider each specific unique circumstances of each of the insureds. But as we sit here now, in terms of the pending claims, there's basically only two reasons why those claims are not settled. It's either documents is outstanding, or the business interruption, the indemnity period, has not yet been realized. When we talk about the value of claims, the first thing that comes to mind is underinsurance. It is still persistent locally and globally. And when we talk about underinsurance, it means that there is averages applied at claim stage. While it's necessary for insurance to work, it is highly regrettable and unhelpful. And to mitigate against it, it is important that our brokers meet our mutual customers and our insureds at least annually to make sure that there's a good understanding of the covers that is already in place, make sure that those covers are adequate, the limits are sufficient, clear understanding of how the different indemnity periods work. So perhaps I can answer that question with a plea to our brokers to assist us. Where documents is outstanding, please chase the insureds, help us to settle these claims swiftly.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, JP. When you look at these figures, the progress is certainly impressive. A key takeout for me, JP, is that greater diligence is required to minimize the issues of underinsurance and timely submission of claims. Chris, now appreciating that our clients will routinely be faced with unanticipated or less anticipated exposures, as advisors, how can we better prepare to help them on their risk mitigation journey?
Nalini, thank you. I think first and foremost, it's, as you know, and as people have heard today, it's about approaching risk with purpose. And that is very important to us as Bryte. Secondly, you've got the customer that's got to be at the center and the front of everything we do and everything our brokers do. And I think that we've got to bear in mind all the way through the transaction. Our brokers play an exceptionally important role in that they need to visit those clients once a year. They need to understand the client's business. They need to understand the client's new exposures, new products, new dependencies. They really have to have a full understanding of that client. And everything during those meetings should be documented as a record of advice. Once all of that information is pulled together, they then engage with us as the insurer. Now, we're the people who bring the capital to the table. We bring the underwriting expertise to the table. and we bring the claims paying ability to the table. In addition to that, we obviously look at risk engineering, which is there as a free service to our clients to assist them with risk mitigation. And we would always encourage brokers when they're busy with their work with the client in terms of understanding risk, etc. If there are challenges and things that they're not familiar with, we have experts in marine and engineering as two examples who would be more than happy to attend meetings with the broker to assist in that space. In addition to that, we've obviously got the risk engineering where they go out and assist with more complex risks, risk improvement, risk mitigation, etc. And that at the end of the day makes for a better risk without any surprises at claim stage. Lastly, training is very important to us. We need to train brokers on our products. So when they do come back from their clients with specifics, we've got the appropriate policies and propositions that will respond. But aligned to that, we have to provide adequate training. And yeah, for me, it's watch the space for the coming year. We've got a lot to do in terms of broker training.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you. Now for our next segment, the employment desk. I chatted to Colin Molepe around the current unemployment dynamics. Here's what he had to say. In many ways, entrepreneurship is the backbone of the modern day economy. But more fail than those who succeed. Let's for a moment talk about our SME realities and the startling failure rate.
Since the onset of COVID, we have unfortunately seen a significant number of businesses, including established ones, shutting their doors. As you would know, in South Africa, 98% of South African businesses are SMEs. Historically, we have one of the highest SME failure rates in the world. COVID has just catalyzed this reality for SMEs, with 90% of businesses finding themselves in distress within just 6 months of the pandemic.
Colin, this must have been a frightening position for SMEs. What are the common contributors to the failure of businesses that are essentially earmarked to change the trajectory of our economy?
Cash flow, unsurprisingly, is the leading problem. But what also hampers the ability to grow and sustain is the lack of founders' expertise to take the business forward, but to also attract good talent. There is a common misconception that funding is an issue. There are numerous funding channels available, but also assistance to access this funding.
On the topic of talent, the unemployment dilemma has become more pronounced across global markets. Can you translate the global realities into context for our markets?
In Africa, entrepreneurship and employment are much more intricately intertwined. Botswana's unemployment rate, which was steadily rising over the past decade, now sits at 18.72%. On this side of the border, unemployment remains a chronic issue. The grim reality, though, is that with SMEs being among those hardest hit by the pandemic, more than 11 million South Africans are now unemployed. These are record high figures. In the context of survival, unemployment is a bigger challenge for many South Africans versus COVID.
So I guess the real question is, what do we do to empower this disillusioned section of society?
Well, from a public sector perspective, the Botswana government's national employment policy is focused on creating gainful employment across strategic focus areas. In South Africa, more than 100 billion has been made available through public and youth employment programs since the 2020 financial year. Plans were also announced to create more than 800,000 jobs. The private sector's participation in both these markets must continue through similar collaborations, investments, but also through access to digital technology resources and embracing automation while balancing this with talent. Greater flexibility in terms of remote working, a culture shift already catalyzed as a result of COVID, building the knowledge base and comfort around technologies, preparing workforces for roles that are fast evolving and anticipating the future of work.
I suppose that makes the development of skills for the now and future roles that much more important.
Absolutely. Other ways in which the private sector needs to support empowerment and employment is through skills development, with an emphasis on vocational and technology. As Bryte, one of the collaborations we are most proud of is the partnership with the Maharishi Institute. Through this initiative, we aim to create the next generation of transformed insurance professionals while presenting employment opportunities to more than 1,000 students. We also offer learnership programs in Durban and our Johannesburg office, assisting previously disadvantaged youth. Bryte is also exceptionally proud of our graduate program, which gives graduates the opportunity to develop their skills and experience in the insurance industry.
Thank you very much, Colin. We are waiting for your questions. The panel and our virtual guests are waiting to answer your questions. Please send those questions through. Ladies and gentlemen, time for a quick commercial break.
At Bryte, we believe it takes resilience, partnerships, and the power of bright minds working together to really shine. We pride ourselves in growing strategic, long-term partnerships with mutual benefits. Partnerships that broaden our capability in niche market sectors and provide customers with value propositions that effectively respond to their particular needs and exposures. We adopt a long-term partnership approach, one that is founded on the solid principles of meaningful collaboration, flexibility, care, trust, sustainability, and mutual success. We help drive enabling risk management behaviors in dynamic environments and help our customers and business partners build enduring, agile businesses. We choose our partners carefully. We're proud to work with the best across multiple industries to bring you products and services that are compelling, relevant, and timely. From experts in motor trade and motor mechanical insurance, crop insurance, agri-assets insurance, financial liability, pet health and short-term insurance, international risk and tax risk insurance, to legal cover and cyber funds protect insurance, smart home appliance and gadgets insurance cover. The list goes on. Our partnerships are key to providing cutting-edge solutions that help our customers de-risk. So, for invested partnerships, robust solutions, and progressive thinking that truly helps you approach risk with purpose, put us to the test. We're ready to partner with you. Call us now. Bryte, approach risk with purpose.
Welcome back. For our next segment, we are joined by Kim Polly, a reputation resilience strategist with more than 2 decades of experience and partner at strategic communications consultancy Instinctive Partners. Uze Esak, a very successful award-winning entrepreneur and the owner of Ripe, a fruit and vegetable export company based in Cape Town. Nicholas Francis, over to the Resilience Desk.
Resilience essentially is about dexterity in responding to disruptions quickly and with relative effectiveness, proactively working to build a bank of goodwill, also ahead of time by ensuring others understand the value you bring, and looking to assess how the business can respond to future events. Now, Nick, within this context, what is your take on planning for the unexpected?
There is always an effective level of risk readiness that many businesses can achieve regardless of the challenges faced. At Bryte, our emphasis remains on preparing customers for the more predictable effects of the less predictable events. All our efforts are aimed at driving business stability. As a business, we encourage entrepreneurial mindsets across our employee base and want to have a positive domino effect on society.
Entrepreneurial mindsets are certainly a critical requirement if South African businesses, big or small, are to navigate the challenging headwinds. And with entrepreneurship and small business forming the backbone of our economy, we must place more emphasis in working to drive resilience for these businesses. But it would be great to have a view from someone who's traveled this road successfully already. Luckily, this is something we can arrange because online today is a tech-savvy, innovative, and energetic visionary. A man who's continued to grow his business amidst a persisting global pandemic, So please join me in welcoming local entrepreneur, Bryte founder, and export specialist, Uzair Esak.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be a part of this, and I'm flattered by your introduction.
From what we've seen, you've earned all this and more, Uzair. Forbes Africa 30 Under 30, Mail and Guardian Top 200, 2019 Medium Business Entrepreneur of the Year. So Uzair, can you take us through your entrepreneurship journey and how you got to establishing your business?
Sure. So I think entrepreneurship is in my blood. My father, my grandfather, my grandfather's father have all been entrepreneurs. From the age of about 7 years old, I had businesses in school, businesses where I would be selling Tazos or CDs to my friends and my classmates. And it just developed into much bigger and much more sustainable businesses.
So what roadblocks did you face and which of them were heightened since the pandemic? How did you innovate to overcome these?
I think one of the biggest issues since the pandemic started was the capacity and efficiency of the ports all around the world, especially in South Africa. What that results in is delays in getting my fruit containers from South Africa to its final destination. Of course, with fruit being a perishable, time is something I don't have the luxury of. I had to get specialized insurance to cover any delays on my shipping.
I mean, Nicholas, as a business insurer, what have been some of the common SME risks that you continue to see?
Kim, probably one of the leading challenges is the lack of investment in even basic risk management, from preventative and mitigation to reactive, which isn't surprising considering cash flow is a perennial issue. Late customer payments, employees wearing many hats, business interruption from machinery breaking down to vehicles breaking down, and limited access to technology, skills, mentorship are also major inhibitors. Uzair, I know for a fact that you can paint a much more vivid picture though.
Yeah, I always laugh and tell people that my company or me making money is actually trying to lose as less money as possible or as little money as possible. There's so much that can still go wrong, which is out of my control. So in order to make my business successful, I've needed to put safety nets across the entire chain. For example, like containers falling off of ships or fire breaking out on a ship. So I've made sure I've got an insurance policy that covers me for all of that inclusively. On top of that, I then have quality control segments which take place both locally on the farm and overseas where the customer receives his fruit. On top of that, I also have credit insurance on my customers, which means that if for whatever reason a customer doesn't pay me, I am covered for at least 80% of that amount.
Uzair, so paying attention to details is really important. But Kim, let's talk about this buzzword, ESG.
ESG is now a key aspect of investment funding decisions. So if your business wants to attract capital, you ignore ESG at your peril. At a truly tangible level, for company leadership, it can impact the longevity of their careers. Not only is executive remuneration being linked directly to the achievement of ESG goals, research shows that if ESG risk tracks higher than 60%, the odds of the CEO being exited within 12 months increases exponentially. So for me, it's really about taking a systems approach to long-term value creation that puts people, so that's social development, and the planet, environmental stewardship, at the center of business strategies.
But Kim, I suppose ensuring that the right ESG practices and business resilience measures are in place is all good and well, but it's also about managing reputation. This is especially important in the age of social media, where sometimes things can really be blown out of proportion.
Indeed, reputation is your most important intangible asset. It sets the tone for how your business is perceived during a crisis or every day, but during a crisis especially, it sets the tone for how it is believed, who stands by you. It can literally make or break a business, sometimes overnight.
Uzair, what is your take on the social license to operate?
We make sure that all our farmers are Global Gap approved. They all have CSA, which is an ethical audit. All our fruit is passed by PPCB, which is the Perishable Board of South Africa.
As someone who understands the hardships of starting any business and the constraints faced, what would be your call to action for government and big business?
I think government and big businesses need to provide young and upcoming entrepreneurs with more support. When I say support, I'm talking about financial, educational, and even emotional, because entrepreneurship is an emotionally draining journey. We have such talent in our country. Just a quick example, I saw a young man the other day renting out chairs at home affairs for R5 an hour. Now, that sort of innovation is difficult to teach. Government and big businesses lack in providing them with the support to take that to the next level. And if they had the correct support to take that innovation to the next level, we would have so many more successful businesses in our country. And that would help our entire economy, the unemployment rates, the overall GDP. So do I know the exact answer of what support to put out there? Probably not. But I just think we need to look at support from a grassroots level and find the talent which we have and nurture that, as mentioned, financially, socially, emotionally, and help these entrepreneurs become the best version of themselves.
Uzair, thanks so much for your time today. Congratulations on how you've navigated the last year. It's been fascinating to learn about your incredible journey. Best of luck for the future. I'm very confident that for you, even the sky is not the limit.
A big thank you to Kim, Uzair and Nicholas for an interesting discussion. Uzair's journey has been truly inspiring. Now to the audience, please remember to send us your questions via the chat function. You could be walking away with an awesome winter warmer hamper. Now for our final video segment of the day, I sat down with Edwin for a recap of what to expect in 2021. Over to the 2021 Risk Outlook desk. Edwin, there have been some extensive discussions around a few key risks, but we can all appreciate that the list, with and without COVID, is indeed endless.
Yeah, certainly, Nolene. We need to remember that other risks continue to impact societies, economies, all in tandem. Pre-COVID, climate-related events such as drought, and then followed by the Knysna fires, and more recently, Eloise and the floods, were at the very top of the list. And these remain immensely concerning. Business will be well served to keep abreast of the relevant trends and patterns and factor these into the applicable operational aspects and risk management planning. For example, fire prevention planning and not building in floodlines remain key. It's vital that business also considers macroeconomic factors such as crime, geopolitical issues, infrastructure constraints, from quality of roads and electricity supplies. More recently, labor and civil unrest, and a disturbing one, terrorism.
On the topic of unexpected, let's talk about something that really blew my mind. I truly did not foresee this as a modern day issue. The now oh so infamous Ever Given's publicity stunt.
Sure, I haven't heard it that way before, if only it were. We're in the business of insurance, and with a large and successful marine portfolio ourselves, we're not entirely surprised. Megaships do bring the necessary economies of scale, but also come with their fair share of new and sizable risk, which we as insurers continue to highlight. So, a ship fire or grounding could come with a hefty price tag, and in this case $1 billion, and cause major disruptions.
But on another surprising note, I believe that in just 5 decades, the size of ships has increased by over 1,000%.
It is no surprise that the Ever Given is among the top 1% in terms of size.
Let's get back to some of the other considerations for business over the next 12 to 24 months in terms of, dare I say this, more manageable exposures.
Yes, Nolene. Fire remains among the more common ones. So it's critical that electrical faults and the storage of flammable goods and materials need to be focused on. Number 2, cybercrime and business interruption are key. Number 3, critical infrastructure failure and electricity supply are concerning. Number 4, shortage of skills will continue to be amongst the list of conventional risks. As an industry, exist to manage risk. Ours is one that may be argued as having countless touch points across various industries and enterprises. We're in a fortunate position to have amazing, knowledgeable employees, partners and brokers who drive awareness of these risk realities, encourage our mutual clients to get ahead of the curve to reduce their exposure and showcase the benefits of well-managed risk. I urge all of us to continue to exercise vigilance and diligence when identifying, assessing and addressing exposures.
Thank you very much for that, Edwin. Moving on to our fourth poll. The question is, what do you think is the most important factor in remedying the current high rate of unemployment? Would it be adequate support, both financial and non-financial, for entrepreneurs and SMEs to foster job creation? B, policy-driven incentives for big business? Or C, greater promotion of existing public and private sector employment initiatives? The poll will be on the bottom right of your screen. While we wait for your questions to come up, or the results to come up, we're nearing the end of our session. Our virtual speakers are standing by, and they are going to be answering questions from you. But let me go to JP first in studio. JP, your question is, has the pandemic impacted how you underwrite risks or changed your appetite for certain risk classes?
Nolene, the COVID pandemic have tested the insurance industry locally and globally. And although it has been proven to be resilient, some lessons are emerging. So in South Africa, only 5% of all of our property policies have non-damage business interruption covers that will respond to COVID. And for all those policies, the covers have been removed for infectious disease or contagious disease from mid last year. It was not Bryte specific, it was industry-wide, both locally and globally. And it was driven by reinsurance. And although it is understandable why the reinsurers do this, there is some bits that is regrettable, because there were some forms of that cover that was, at the specific premises for a specific disease. In South Africa, typically listeriosis. Those kind of covers are not at the moment available. So yes, that was a change for that 5%. But if we turn to the other 95% of our portfolio, there were no change, and there is no changes in the underwriting practices for that. Except perhaps that we should think about a moment, why is it that here in South Africa that we had these covers that was around for decades, those 95% didn't choose to elect it. Right now we have the benefit of people are more risk averse, they're aware of it, so I think there's opportunities for more of these customers of us to have the benefit of business interruption and to have wider covers, longer indemnity periods. There's some other lessons. I know time is issue, so there's some other lessons as well. The first is in terms of cost or price. Globally, there's a better awareness of risk. The cost of risk have increased, so we see that coming through in rates, increased premiums. Here in South Africa, we've seen it in the liability market. We've seen it in the corporate property market. We have not yet seen it fully in the commercial property market. It's only coming through right now. Then the other set of lessons, I basket them under back to basics. We've seen there is a number of things that come out to the fore in terms of policy wordings and market conduct. In many cases, the policy schedules were not clear. Policy schedules were not aligned with the policy wordings. And there's even some examples where brokers, as part of their process and their record of advice, have provided customers with summaries that is not aligned to the policy schedule and the policy wordings. Those things are not new, but it's some things that we will have to fix. But it is slightly wide of strict underwriting.
Thank you very much for that, JP. We'll be asking Edwin, as well as Ziki Nganuno, who is in Botswana, a question or two. But let me give you the results of our last poll. What do you think is the most important factor in remedying the current high rates of unemployment? Overwhelmingly, 71.5 said adequate support, both financial and non-financial, for entrepreneurs and SMEs to foster job creation. And 21% said greater promotion of public and private sector employment initiatives. I'd like to ask Edwin as well as Ziggy, if you don't mind, a question. Ziggy, are you back with us? Let's wait until we can get Ziggy back online. But I'd like to ask you, Edwin, as a business leader in an industry that has been looked at the most for support, what for you has been the greatest challenge and the most notable opportunity?
Yeah, Nolene, as an industry as a whole, we have a deep-founded reputation to protect. And we've done well over many, many years. But with reputation comes key and clear communication. And we're very proud as Bryte to have gone out early on this pandemic and the crisis to communicate with our brokers and our partners. But as an industry, I think we can work on communicating and improving our communication also to the clients and to ensure that there's no expectation gap.
Thank you very much, Edwin. Let's welcome back all our virtual speakers. Ziggy, I'd like to ask you the same question that I've just asked Edwin, and that question is, as a business leader in an industry that has been looked at the most for support, what for you has been the greatest challenge and the most notable opportunity?
Yes, you're right, Nolene. Insurance is meant to be there for us in difficult times. And as you heard earlier, Bryte has continued to provide financial compensation to policyholders without skipping a beat. What is disappointing, however, is the number of individuals and businesses in Botswana that suffer serious and sometimes debilitating losses that are either grossly uninsured or not insured at all. It's really painful, especially where they're not insured at all. So the opportunity here, Nolene, is for all of us as insurance practitioners, our partners and ourselves, to ensure that the benefits of insurance are extended to a greater proportion of our population to protect them against the next catastrophe. And this is especially important in a developing country like Botswana, where the protection gap or the insurance penetration rate is low. So we invite our partners to work with us to try and reduce the gap.
Thank you very much, Ziggy, for that question. I'd like to go to JP Landman and ask you a viewer question, JP. And the question is, how will corruption and the Zondo Commission affect the economy of our country?
Well, corruption is affecting it poorly. If we can get the corruption levels down, that'll be a positive. I think the Zondo Commission has already had a very positive impact. The Zondo Commission, if you look at it on a micro level, cost about R1 billion, cost the taxpayer about R1 billion. And I think so far, companies have already repaid more than rand as a result of what was exposed at the Zondo Commission. Think of McKinsey, think of Deloitte, think of, those were also SAP, the German company. So if you spend R1 billion, you get R3 billion back, well, that's a huge plus. I think the Zondo Commission's bigger contribution is that it has created an awareness about corruption and how deep it's really embedded in our society, and people are reacting against it. We saw that very clearly with the PPE scandal. People are really, really angry about corruption, and that, I think, is the Zondo Commission's biggest contribution.
Thank you very much, JP Landman. Let's ask Dr. Leoga a question from a viewer. How do you see the economic forecast for 2021 being impacted by the different COVID waves and potential lockdown scenarios?
So I still think that the GDP for this year, 2021, will be a lot higher than last year. And that's mainly because of base effects. So we have favorable base effects, the statistical analysis. And that's because we had last year a huge contraction in GDP. And so typically what is that the following year, we get a big reversal, largely because of the opening up of the economy and productivity increasing. But that's not to say that the economy is shooting its lights out. If you look beyond 2021, we realize that the numbers are actually quite weak. So for the next 3 years, so 2022, 2024, we expect to see, GDP at around 2.5%, which is really, really low, and it's not sufficient to chip away at the very high unemployment.
Let's leave it there. Dr. Leoka, thank you very, very much for joining us. We have one more poll for today. We hope this is the easiest one yet. And the question is, how would you rate today's session? Please leave us a comment on what you liked or what maybe can be improved. The poll will be at the bottom right of your screen. Edwin, any closing comments from you?
Yeah, Nolene, thank you. It was very insightful. It was great to have all our presenters, Coconut Kells, JP Landman, Dr. Leoka, and others. Thank you for participating, and especially to you. Thank you. We really appreciate everything that you've done. Thank you.
Yeah.
And once again to our loyal broker partner base. Absolutely. You guys have just been fantastic. And we look forward to see you guys soon and visit with you. And thank you for your support.
Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you for all your questions today. Bryte will be responding to these in the form of a post-event Q&A document. On behalf of Bryte, thank you once again to our wonderful audience for attending this event and for being so engaged. Congratulations again to all our lucky winners. Before we conclude the formalities, lunch is on us. I hope you've used your voucher. We look forward to seeing you in the breakaway rooms, which are accessible for the rest of the day. Please make use of these for networking, to learn more about products, services, or ask any questions. A little bird tells me that there are some truly awesome gizmos and gadgets up for grabs in the breakaway rooms. On that high note, I'm Nolene Mahalo Nasangu, signing out. Bye-bye.
Seeing into the future is no easy task. Unseen risks lie waiting everywhere. So being prepared for any eventuality is a Bryte decision. As a premier proactive insurance specialist, Bryte Insurance partners with you and your business to manage your insurance needs. Visit bryteinsure.co.za or contact your broker for more. Bryte Insurance. Approach risk with purpose.